My name's Mike Ellis. I have a problem. I rescue, refurbish, restore and revitalise vintage drums, in particular Premier drums. In this programme I'll share with you my adventures, ups and downs, ins and outs, triumphs and tragedies as I lavish some TLC on vintage British drums. Welcome to the Drum Fettler.
Hello fettling thrill seekers, I hope you're wearing your steel radial Y-fronts with reinforced gusset, because this edition of TDF will have your spleen erupting with delight. We'll be taking an in-depth look at Lokfast stands, fitting a bass drum mounted cymbal arm, taking things out of boxes, putting things in boxes, inspecting lugs and starting an exciting new project, which is sure to make your knees bend the wrong way and go all wibbly wobbly. Let's take a look at this Lokfast cymbal stand. Looks to be in excellent condition. I think it's a version 1 because it doesn't have the little screw down spikes in the feet. Look at the top stem. Yeah, it's the shorter top stem because they soon made the stem longer upon, one assumes, request of drummers. But this one seems to be really nice. No pitting, just dirty, so I think what we'll do is we'll give this a clean. It's even got its original green sleeve on it. Green sleeves. Well, as expected, I was fairly quick and easy. The chrome is in superb condition and didn't really need a great deal of effort, just a good polish. Get some of the dirt that's got stuck to it, and it's coming up. Well, it's not exactly like new because obviously there's a few battle scars to contend with, but it's certainly a lot shinier, a lot cleaner, and a good example of one of Premier's finest and most elegant stands. Well, since we're looking at all things Lokfast in a cymbal stand sort of way, I thought it might be a good idea to have a look at things like this. Bass drum mounted cymbal arms. Now, this is the Premier L arm. It is part number, I've forgotten the part number for the moment, but I'm sure somebody will put the part number here now. There we go. L arm. Now, Premier did lots and lots of L arms in the 50s, all manner of little booms and short and long things and all that, but they were hoop mounted, which was the fashion and the style at the time. And then during the 60s they introduced the 470 disappearing boom. Now that's interesting because a certain Far Eastern drum company claims to have invented the disappearing boom arm, but we know better, don't we? Now, it's Premier invented the disappearing boom arm way back when, in the 1960s. The 470 was upgraded in 1968 when the Lokfast range was introduced. But then this came along, and it was unusual in as much that quite a lot of other manufacturers were doing an L arm, but Premier hadn't done one for some time. So along with their folding spurs as well, they've been doing disappearing spurs, other people have been doing folding spurs. They went for folding spurs. Market forces, who knows? But anyway, we love them for it because this is mine from my collection. It's got a cymbal crown on the end rather than the wing nut and felts and everything, but that's just my personal preference. Now, as it happens by happy coincidence, I've got a bass drum in for a rewrap and it needs a L-arm mount fitting to it. So let's go and take a look at that, shall we?
Now, we've got to fit a cymbal arm mount to the bass drum. Unfortunately, this shell is not drilled. The whole concept of a bass drum mounted cymbal arm was starting to lose favour with all but the most discerning drummers in the early 80s. So this would have been a special order. This is the batter side, that's the front of the drum. So that means that the mount will go somewhere like that. So I need to measure centre, that way, and then put the holes in. I'll get on with that now. Holes are drilled, the mount fits, which is nice. Now we're going to be fitting a 39235 to the bass drum for the cymbal arm. In the 70s, more commonly used was this. This is the 38351. It started life as a floor tom leg holder, but soon was doing double duty on ride cymbal arm mounting duties on bass drums. And what many people don't realise is it will fit in the same holes as the 39235. Now these were, as I say, were falling out of fashion by the early 1980s, and they also had a propensity, when tightened up very, very tightly, to distort, and the casing would splay out and it wouldn't grip the arm particularly tightly. 39235 was much better for this, but it's got an 11.5mm hole, whereas the 38351 has a 9.5mm hole. There were versions of this with 9.5mm holes. I don't have one at the moment, so that's another thing to add to the list. It's like Christmas Day, isn't it, when a parcel arrives? Very special delivery this, even though it looked like it was just dumped over the fence and left there. Apparently I managed to sign for it without actually leaving the workshop, so I don't know whether the talent lies with me or the courier. So well done DPD, fantastic service there, up to your usual standard. So anyway, I think we need to get this opened and see what's inside. That looks like a 13. And there is the 12-inch. Probably seen this knocking around in the background. It's a Beverley floor tom, 16 by 15, and has a mahogany shell, and it's off to its new home in Spain, so I just need to dismantle it for its journey over there. A lot of people say to me, "Who are you? What were you making me drink? I can't feel my legs. Where are my pants?" A lot of people say to me, what is the difference between Lokfast and tri-lock stands? Well, it's quite simple. Tri-lock stands are tripods. Lokfast stands are flush based. Here, let me show you. Lokfast, tri-lock, 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 Lokfast, tri-lock. Got it? Excellent. It's probably a good time to have a look at the history of Lokfast stands, I think. Don't you?
Yeah!
Good!
Hooray!
The famous and much admired Lokfast range of hardware was announced in 1968 and consisted of a small selection of elegantly designed stands and new tom holders. The stands were quite unlike anything that had been seen before. The oval base tube fitted via heavy casting to the unusual steel legs that started as a vertical oval and gradually flattened out to a horizontal, capped off with a neat rubber foot matching the leg shape. The legs worked the same as the previous flush base stands and folded up for packing, but the fiddly round lock bolt on the base was replaced by a new chunky hand-sized cast wing nut, which cleverly had a removable steel hex nut so the threaded element could be easily replaced if needed. Premier's engineers carried through the unique design to the wing bolts. No off-the-shelf components would do. These wing bolts screwed into a captured casting with a fetching slanted profile. The 313 snare stand featured a substantial cast cradle tilter with 2 swing arms, and the third, rather than sliding back and forth, was hinged vertically and locked against a drum by way of a wing bolt. To create a pleasing symmetry, the footplate from the 250S pedal was installed on the 315 hi-hat stand, which still carried the top tube from the 289 stand, but had the added bonus of adjustable internal spring and screw-in spikes on the rubber feet. The 314 stand shared the family looks and was fitted with a newly designed 307 cast cymbal tilter. In 1973, the hi-hat stand acquired a chunkier, wider, more substantial cast footplate, sprayed black, and the straight cymbal stand gained a longer top rod. In 1976, the Lokfast stand range was expanded to include a boom stand, which, unlike other stands of the time, featured not only a long boom, but an adjustable weighted counterbalance. Also added was a triple tom stand, adapted from the double tom holder. The Lokfast tom stands and boom cymbal stand soon after acquired longer legs with steel disc feet and a screw-down spike on each leg. In 1980, the unique wing bolts were replaced with the bigger tri-lock hand bolts, and the range remained available until around 1987, when the component stock was used upon budget clearance kits, with some of the cast parts sprayed black. The Beverley Tom, well, at least one of them that arrived a little earlier, been formulating an idea what to do with it. Concert tom, so there's going to be some work. But I was thinking, I did a Royale kit a couple of years ago, and that was a 12, 16, 22. And what I really would like to do is something very similar, because I did it in a white marine pearl wrap. So what I was thinking, and this could be the first drum in a sort of ongoing project, of a 13, 16, 22 or maybe even 24 inch, because they're sort of, you know, standard sizes, popular sizes, but as a sound wave, because the Royale, as you know, had the same lugs, the 144620 lugs, but the shells were the standard Premier shells, the birch shells with the support rings. So I'm kind of thinking I might want to recreate that project. Now I don't have a 16-inch shell available at the moment, but there is a 24-inch shell there, but it's got the wrong spurs on, so I think what I might do is I might just do this first, and then as and when shells present themselves, then I can add to it. During the 70s, the shells used by Premier and all their sort of sub-brands, the sound waves, even the resonators, Super Olympic, Olympic, Club, even Beverleys and Hammer drums were the same shells. They didn't make them any different, it was just a standard shell but different hardware configurations. So I think this is eminently qualified to be part of the Soundwave project, because it does have the Premier shell.
Have a look at this. Just had a consignment of bits, bobs, Premier parts, lots of lugs, lots of hand nuts and snare parts, but the best thing is I've got one of these, and it's the 39235 with the 9.5mm hole for the cymbal arm mount on the bass drum, which is great. I've been waiting ages for one of these. So patience is a virtue. It always comes to he who waits and he who buys lots and lots of spare parts. If you find yourself in need of Premier parts, and let's face it, who doesn't, pop along to the website. Even if you can't see what you need, drop me a line through the contact form. Also goes for Beverley drums, Hammer drums, and of course Olympic.
First thing I need to do with the Beverley Tom is strip it back. It's got a rather lovely Fablon sticky back plastic covering. I've got to strip it all back, and what's going to need to happen as well is these lugs will be coming off and the 144620 lugs will be going on. I'm going to need to fill the existing holes and re-drill, as well as cut the bearing edge, obviously, on the open end. I could use the existing holes left by the Beverley lugs because it's the same mount hole pattern, but unfortunately the footprint of the 144620 lug is a bit longer, so I can't do them end to end, and that's how I want to do them because that's how the original sound waves were. So what I'm going to need to do is, like I say, strip the whole shell down, fill the holes, let it dry, go off for a few days, and then re-drill the holes in the right place.
Well, I'm going to crack on taking this drum apart and peeling off the Fablon, the sticky back plastic white covering that's been put on. That's the holes all filled. Just leave that for a few days to harden, and then we can get on with the business of preparing the shell for wrapping. This is the 144620 lug as used on soundwave drums, sometimes known as a speedboat lug, presumably because of its ship-form speedboaty shape. First appeared on Olympic 4-toms in the early 1970s, then it was used on the Super Olympics, which of course became the Soundwaves that continued to be used throughout the 80s on Royale, Crown and early APKs. It had a bigger brother, which was the 1152, which you can see here. It's basically the same design, but it's just a little bit deeper. Now these were used on bass drums, and the reason they're a bit deeper obviously is because the rod is a little bit higher to clear the bass drum flesh hoop, which is thicker than a regular tom hoop. Now version 2 of Soundwave, as you know, was undersized. What Premier had to do was they had to fit these lugs to a plinth, like so. And what this does is it raises the lug up off the undersized shell and takes up the missing bit, if you like, of diameter to ensure that the rod's go in straight. On the 1446, in order to facilitate this, they had to make a new version. Now, if you look at the bottom of the normal 1446, you can see it's got 2 mount holes, as you would expect. But this is one from a version 2 Soundwave. And you might be able to see there are 3 mount holes, and that's because these two, like the bass drum, had to be mounted on a plinth, and they needed the extra hole in order to mount the lug securely onto the plinth. Obviously we've got all the hardware off. We're going to be using some of it, but not all of it. We've got to put the new 1446 lugs on. Well, I think that is ready now for a spot of sanding. The filler seems to have all gone off nicely, so we'll get that sanded, then we'll get it drilled. And the other thing we've got to do is put a bearing edge on this side of the drum, because as you'll recall, it started life as a concert tom. Now concert toms were single-headed, so like normal drums they would have a bearing edge on the playing side, but unlike conventional drums it wouldn't have a bearing edge on this side, it would just be a flat finished edge. So what I need to do is replicate the bearing edge on this side, because obviously it's going to have 2 heads. So off to the woodshopy bit. Holes sanded down, ready now for drilling for 2 rows of lugs. Now this is essentially a virgin shell now. Essentially this is a virgin shell now, so I need to mark it up and drill it. Now I can still see where the original beveling lugs were, so I've got a reference point. So obviously I'm going to use them as the guide to where the 2 rows of lugs should be fitted. So I just need to do a bit of measuring, careful measuring and marking and checking and measuring again to make sure that when I do drill it, I drill everything in the right place. Right, that's the pilot holes drilled. Now I just need to make them bigger in stages. Holes are right size, the lugs all fit, nice and snug, which is lovely.
We'll be coming back to the Soundwave project as and when we need to. Until then, thanks for watching and see you next time on Drum Fettler.